Welcome to The Art of Relationships. This podcast is produced by the Biola University Center for Marriage and Relationships. Let's get right into it.
Welcome to another Art of Relationships podcast. My name is Chris. This is Alisa. By the way, Mandy, thank you for the introduction. You guys know where to find us. So let's dive right into a topic that is relevant every single day, I think, of the year. Yeah. And I think every single day is relevant because we feel almost every day, many of us, busyness and stress. And the kind of outcome of that is burnout. And one of the things that is a huge relationship killer, and certainly a red flag, Lisa, is when busyness and stress starts leading to cracks in our relationship, and we're not functioning very well, but we don't have the resources, the emotional bandwidth, because we're doing so much. We got kids who are in whatever, and they're doing this and that, and we've got
We've got work, we've got school, maybe you're parenting, maybe you're trying to do grad school and dating and work. Maybe you're in that sandwich generation like we are, where we're taking care of grandkids and elderly parents, and even sometimes dealing with financial issues. We're dealing with issues with our kids, maybe, when we have kids that are struggling, or maybe even chronic health issues. And it just begins to add up to where it becomes overwhelming and just such a burden that we cease to begin to be able to function in a normal way.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's it, Lise. I think that recognition that we're not doing well, we can probably point to times and situations when we're just kind of maxed out.
Yeah.
So, by the way, it can happen. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it can happen what?
Well, it can happen not just in young marriages, it can happen in people that are retired, but it also happens with just relationships, right? Students, people in their 20s and 30s, maybe they're dating, but relationships, it's a busy time trying to find out what's my major. I got to study, I got finals, I have to work, I have to balance all of these things, and we find them so stressed out.
And it can even be with good things, right? I mean, we love what we do for work. A lot of people, you just love what you do for work. But let's say that you've got work, you've got kids that you love, you've got volunteer work that you're doing, hobbies, you're coaching your kids' teams, you're leading Bible studies, you're mentoring. I mean, all of this can be good stuff. It's not all bad stuff. But when the good stuff becomes too much and it becomes more of a burden than a joy, then you're facing burnout.
Yeah, so let's dive into that topic because it is something that impacts almost all relationships, and not just your personal family relationships, your marriage, your boyfriend, girlfriend. It affects your job, your kids, the way you deal with, bad news in general in life, right? Okay. First of all, Lisa, what is busyness, right? What does that mean when we say, and then let's talk about some symptoms, and eventually let's get to a point of, here's what you do. Here's how you recognize things. So start us off. For you, what does it mean when we say, how do I even recognize busyness? What is it?
Yeah, busyness and burnout, it can really be a variety of things, because when we talk about burnout, we're talking about a chronic depletion. It's a chronic depletion in your emotional capacity, your mental capacity, your relational capacity. And so when we look at that, there's a really interesting Chinese symbol, and maybe we can even put this up on the screen for you to see. But the interesting thing about this symbol for busyness is that it's made up of two symbols.
Show it.
Yeah, okay. We'll post this. It kind of looks like that. But anyway, it's two symbols together, and that first symbol is the symbol for heart, and the second symbol is a symbol for killing. And heart killing together equals busyness to the point of exhaustion and the inability to function.
Yeah, all right, cool. So in these Chinese characters, the way we English people would read them, heart killer equals, for them, it's the symbol for busyness. But what you're saying is those two really kind of lead to, wait a minute, heart killing.
Yeah.
What happens there? So busyness means it eventually, like you said, depletes us. Think about driving in a car. You have very little gas left. So many of you know that feeling. And it's like, oh my goodness, I either have to coast, I have to wait for that next, gas station. I remember us being on a freeway.
I just thought of that.
And the thing said, you have 20 miles left till you're empty. And the next gas station is 33 miles away.
Yeah.
And that depletion all of a sudden changed what we needed to do. It's like, we're in panic mode.
Oh, yeah.
We're depleted. We're just going to have to coast. Oh, dear Lord, help us.
Yep.
Okay. So depletion, Lise, is one sign, obviously, of busyness.
Good.
And then that heart killer is kind of about, think of it another way as like an emotional killer. It's it is physical, right? But we're going to talk about the relational, kind of psychological part of the heart,
sure.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What would you say are some ways that we would begin to recognize that? Or what would happen at this point when we go, all right, I relate to this. I'm stressed out. You don't have to remind me. I'll say this.
Yeah.
Look for some signs if you want to know. Think about what stress does. Some of you may find yourself being more critical. Maybe you find yourself being, maybe it's physical, like you bite your nails more often. You talk fast. You are impatient with people. Yeah. You begin to say and do certain things like, why am I so snappy right here? Yeah. What is it? And I know for me, one of them I could tell is I just like sleep a lot. Like I'm just stressed. I just got to get away, right?
Yeah, I know you're stressed out when I come home and you're napping. The first thing I want to say is, what's wrong? What happened?
That's right. And what do you do when you get stressed, when you know you're overly busy and you're stressed? What comes out for you physically?
Gosh, I think I probably fall in the category of being a little bit more snippy at people about things that are completely unrelated to what I'm stressed out about. So I get snippy, and probably I'm way more prone to cry too. It just comes out in tears. It's like I can't stop it. It just comes out in tears.
Yeah. And so we are, as human beings, just naturally going to deal with busy life and stress because we have things like church and ministry. We have work, we have play, we have kids, we have groups, we have meetings. And I think many of those are good.
Right.
They can cause, of course, this idea of stress and busyness. And we have to admit, stress, there's a lot of good to that, right? I mean, it's energizing. I know I have to go do a project or get to do something. It's kind of like, oh, I like doing this ministry. I like going to church. I like singing in the choir. I like, getting the opportunity to go do this ministry.
Yeah.
And so some amount of that's normal and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But something happens when it tips.
Well, and don't you think too, Chris, that there's a cultural push to glorify busyness, right? Oh, you wouldn't believe how busy I am. And I can hear myself. I fall into that too. You can't believe where we have to go, where we're speaking, where we're right. We've got to write this. We've got to do this. There's a cultural pressure to be busy, as if you're not busy, then you're lazy. And even within the Christian culture, right? That, I'm so busy serving the Lord, right? And if you're really serving the Lord, you're doing it to a point to where you're giving it everything you've got, where you've got nothing left on the table. And that's seen as like a spiritual gifting and a spiritual pat on the back that I'm so busy doing for the Lord and serving the Lord.
Yeah, man. And I think, Lisa, you hit something that maybe a lot of Christians can misidentify, or, like you said, kind of go, well, but this is what God has called me to. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I just got to suck it up more because the outcome is so important.
And I think along those lines, too, that maybe we misinterpret the setting of boundaries and the ability to say no with being selfish. If I say no because I know I don't have margin for it, I'm really worn out, and I need to not do that event, well, then I'm being selfish. If I don't do it, who's going to do it? And then people are going to go without.
No, that's great. I love that. All right, so let's dive into some things that I think are important. What are some of the hidden costs, Lisa, that this brings up, right? There are some hidden things that people need to know, right? First of all, we talked about, maybe you can identify this with some of the physical, but there are some other things that start to impact relationships.
Well, it definitely does, because when you've burned your candles at both ends, you're overcommitted, you're over pouring yourself out on behalf of other people in some really necessary good ways. But what happens is that, like you were using the analogy of the gas tank, your gas tank is on empty. And when you are functioning repeatedly and regularly on empty, you have nothing left to give others. You have no way of taking care of others because you haven't paused to take care of yourself.
So what do we call that? We call that relational leftovers, right?
Right.
So my work, my job, outside, my ministry, the group I lead, the people I need to go see and do the housework. And what do you get? And we have found this in our marriage, and we found it for a lot of other people. They get the relational leftovers, right? I come in, I'm like, I'm exhausted. I'm just going to go to the room and lay down. Like, but we haven't even talked for 24 hours, for 48. And you're disengaging from me. And it's like, yeah, you only get what I have left.
And it's not much. It's not much. So that cost that you're talking about is a disconnect relationally in our closest relationships, right?
It happens spiritually too, right? I mean, all of a sudden we get so busy for God that we can also, the same thing happens. Like, I'm not really able to spend time with God, talk to Him, pray to Him, because I'm so busy doing His work.
Right.
Yikes.
Yeah, I think another cost along those lines is maybe experiencing a sense of resentment toward other people, because maybe your own expectations are not being met in the middle of that too. So that resentment, that bitterness can grow.
Yeah, I love that.
Especially, let's say that, like you said, when you come home and you're really tired and you just want to disconnect and recharge, and you go back to the room and close that door. Yeah. Well, if my expectation is, hey, wait a second, we're having dinner. Don't you want to come to the dinner table? Don't you want to debrief about your day? I need to hear what's going on in your heart. There are a couple things that I really need to talk about with you and get your input on. And when that's not happening, well, then that's an unmet expectation that I have. And when that begins to happen over and over and over, it's like, that's going to happen every now and then, because that's just doing life with human people, right? But when it becomes the pattern, right, that's when we get in trouble, because then that's when the roots of bitterness, disconnect, and resentment can really take root.
Yeah, so go check out our podcast on setting good expectations and what happens when our expectations aren't met. So that's another kind of very important trail to go down if this is it.
Yeah.
Lisa, what else now would you suggest is important? So give me another thing. Like, for example, I'm thinking about, what does it mean for recovery, or what does it mean to recognize some signs? And what else do you think would be helpful in this topic as you've been thinking about it, because it affects both of us?
Yeah. Well, I think that we've got to realize that when it comes to burnout, because we're just overcommitted, and we're talking in terms of recovery more than just rest. More than just, hey, I just need a nap and then I'm going to be good to go. It's a lot deeper than that. And so I think what we really have to start with, overarching, is the idea of we need to reorder our priorities. Our priorities have become skewed, they've gotten out of whack, and we need to start with reordering those priorities.
It makes you think of some movie, I can't remember. You've got to check your priorities.
Harry Potter.
And that one,
Hermione.
Hermione. And I also think, of a Pepsi commercial where the little boy, is talking about, he's like, yeah, I'm going to start working out. I need to do it. I got to reorder my priorities. And he's drinking from a big old 2-gallon jug of Coke. Remember that?
He said the drinking is the worst.
Drinking is the worst.
We use that line all the time. The drinking is
Okay, so let's talk about that. Priorities real quickly, reordering. How do you know, what would you suggest to recognize, all right, I've gotten out, man. I've messed this up. I've been giving my priority to work, which for many people is like important. But we oftentimes will tell couples, look, think about this. Who do you want to give your best to? And there's this great passage, it's great illustration in the Old Testament, and it's this. That illustration it comes from a very powerful, proverb, which talks about giving God the first fruits of what we sow, the first fruits. Now, first fruits is a fascinating Old Testament metaphor, which means this, and we've talked to even farmers about this. They say, yeah, here's a first fruit. The very first fruits that come out of the harvest are the best. That fruit is most likely to be the best of all the season we have, and they call it first fruits. What did God say? Honor me with the first fruits of all you produce.
Yeah, bring it. That's right.
Then when you give me those first fruits, your barns are going to be filled with plenty, and your vats are going to overflow with new wine. Well, think about that. God is asking us to honor him with all that we give by giving him the very best. I mean, you're not at market how much a farmer can get from the first fruits are the best. But God says, no, honor me. Let's pull that into relationships. Does our spouse deserve our first fruits? Or are we giving our first fruits to our job, to our ministry, to the church? Well, that's awesome. But if my first fruits are there, my priorities are now out of whack, and I need to reconsider. I wonder if when I come home and my wife gets leftovers, is that honoring? If God says honor me by honoring your spouse, then my job ought to be, what are my first fruits? My time, my attention, my joy. What do you need? Time, attention, acceptance, a commitment to each other. But I'm not giving those to you? I need to go back and go, wait a minute. When am I at my best? 7 a.m. when I head to work and I give until 12 and I'm like, awesome. Then I need to consider, how can I give those to the relationship, to the marriage? Maybe I need to get up earlier, or maybe I need to go to work later and have those first fruits of my joy, my love, my attention, towards you.
I love that. Yeah.
Instead of left.
So what I hear you saying, Chris, is that it takes a reordering, starting with just even mentally, emotionally doing a reset, where our first priority, you talked about God and the first fruits, where we are getting up, maybe it's a little bit earlier in the morning, and we are dedicating a period of time. It might be 15 minutes, and that's all you can squeeze out. It might be an hour if you have more time, but you're giving the Lord those first fruits. You're communing with him.
The best of you,
right?
The most rested you,
right? Which sets the tone for the rest of the day, right?
And he says when we are to honor each other as we love God in that same way. And so therefore I need to be thinking, okay, my best is at this time. And I can no longer give it to other people or to work. They deserve,
or to hobbies, or to volunteer work, things that are good, but you need to reserve that first fruits for your best yes. There's a lot of good yeses, right? There's a lot of really good yeses, But the best yes will be first for God, then your spouse, then your kids, then work and everything else.
I think that's it. And I think we reverse them in our culture because of what you said, that this culture today looks at people that are busy or that
And
are not
idolizes
busy,
them.
and they idolize them, and they're not busy, they're being lazy. When indeed, I think that that order that we're doing you need to sit and ask, where are my first fruits going?
Yeah.
And do I have this reversed?
So when we think about getting those priorities back in order, Chris, there might be a couple of steps that we need to take to in order to be able to do that, because the last thing we're saying is just pile more on now you got to add a quiet time to everything else. Now you got to schedule time with your spouse, with your kids, in addition to everything else. So what we would recommend to combat this and to start this recovery, to get those reordering of the priorities back where they should be, is number one, we've got to address the root cause. And that means asking yourself, where am I overcommitting? What am I overcommitting myself to out of a sense of fear
Guilt
or guilt?
or obligation
Exactly.
or shame, right? Oh, I need to go spend time with this person because that's what good kids do. That's a good parent.
That's right.
That's what good this one.
I've got to go visit my elderly parents in assisted living 4 times a week because they need us to come by and have that kind of interaction.
And they may very well, and you may have the time. But it also may not necessarily be that many times, and you need to figure out, am I doing this for the right motives, right reasons, out of guilt, out of shame? But so instead of going into like, oh, wait, I could cut this back, it's almost going, wait, Lord. And so this is what you're saying, I think. Yeah. As we sit and go through this, we need to ask the hard question, what am I giving to?
And why? And why?
That's right.
Because if we're doing it out of a sense of fear or guilt or obligation, that's probably a pretty good indication that we need to rethink that as a priority up at the top. And so really getting down to the root, what am I overcommitting to and why? And really identifying that.
Lisa, one of the things that you and I have written a little bit on and have talked about in relation to this, one technique that we have found that's helpful is telling every newlywed married couple that they have a gift that's been extended to them in Scripture, in the Old Testament. And it's in Deuteronomy 34:5, and it says imagine this, Israel, time of war. People are always, fighting against Israel, and there's this need for soldiers. And yet, the Old Testament says, I imagine it was Moses who said, every newlywed soldier shall not go out with the army for a period of
1 year
in order to stay home and
make his wife happy. I love that verse. I think that's fantastic.
Imagine that. Here's a warring country that is defending itself and whatever, I don't know at the time, but exactly what was going on. But they were saying every newlywed couple, soldier, needs to take an entire year to stay home in order to make his wife happy, which, by the way, means something about a sabbatical and the importance of it. How are you going to know if you're so busy, if you never have time to stop and pause and consider the why am I so busy? Taking a sabbatical from maybe that extra job. Maybe you have to keep your job and you can't take a sabbatical, but you can surely find something to cut out.
Maybe it's volunteering in your kids' classrooms and you take a year off. Maybe it's taking a year off from coaching your kids' baseball teams. Maybe it's taking a year off from your lay ministry, even at church, because you are burned out and you're overcommitted. And remember, we're fighting that tendency so that we don't get into a place of where we are so burned out, so empty that we don't have something left to give.
Yeah.
And so,
Lisa, it's no surprise, is it, that the two professions that are most likely to use sabbaticals are professors, academic institutions. You get a sabbatical every 7 years.
Right.
Imagine that. It's kind of biblical, kind of weird. But also pastors.
oh, they need a sabbatical.
They need sabbaticals.
Yeah.
And they are oftentimes the ones that are most overworked, whose marriages are most impacted
And threatened, yeah.
threatened. And many of their, unfortunately, overseers might say, hey, you can't take off this fall semester or these 3 months. We need you. What will we do?
You already get 2 weeks of vacation. That's the business model.
So, by the way, if you're in a church, you're an overseer, you work with the pastor, you
Yeah.
encourage and do all you can to get that pastor, that ministry leader, to take a sabbatical where they can reinvest. And by the way, it would be awesome to take a whole year sabbatical, but even just a couple of months.
Like
could be
3
helpful.
months, 2 or 3 months, yeah.
Lisa, what do you think then is the defining things about the why? And then what do you suggest when it comes to examining your heart, as this passage or as that thing talks about? In other words, I think about this verse. It says, watch over your heart with all diligence,
Yeah.
for from it
Right.
flow the springs of life.
Right. The wellspring of life flows from our heart.
So heart killers,
Right.
this is where our wellspring flows from. This is where everything I'm like passionate about and I enjoy and I want to have
Yes.
amazing connection with you. And if I'm not watching over my heart, I think this is what you're suggesting, then I'm basically putting at risk the wellspring of life,
Yeah.
says the proverb.
Yeah, and so I think what you're getting at, Chris, is not only do we have to address and identify the root of where we're overcommitting, but we've also got to give ourselves permission to pull back and to give ourselves permission
Sabbatical idea.
to do the sabbatical, to say no when we need to say no. And then not only to pull back, give yourself permission to say no, but then I think that third thing would be to begin to identify places where you can carve out a margin in life, a little bit more borders, so that you have the emotional energy and the wherewithal to be able to step up to the plate where you do need to step up to the plate, right? There's got to be a way that you create margin and build up joy, like true joy in life. And so we have 2 important questions to ask yourself in order to carve out those places of margin and joy.
All right, let's do it. Well, when it comes to money and marriage, we all want clarity and confidence, right? And especially unity with spouses, right? I think, Lisa, that's why we get to work personally with Colby Gilmore of Blue Trust.
That's right. Colby Gilmore, along with other Blue Trust certified wealth strategists, offers personalized, biblically centered financial planning and investment management services, no matter what your income level is.
Lisa, say that title twice. Blue Trust Certified Wealth Strategist. That's a tough
I'm not sure I could.
I know. So they do put clients' best interest first, and they don't sell financial products. I love that about them.
Me too. And you know what? We highly recommend Colby Gilmore and Blue Trust for anyone looking for both financial unity with your spouse and opportunities to increase your wealth and your generosity.
Yeah. So if you guys want to check out ronblue.com or reach out to Colby Gilmore at colby.gilmore at ronblue.com. That's colby.gilmore at ronblue.com. I think you guys will be glad you did. All right. Hey, thanks to our sponsors like Colby Gilmore at Ron Blue Trust. Lise, one of the things that now we're starting to get into is 2 important questions that help us identify the margins or how to create the margins.
Create space.
One of the things I think is very important to help us is modeling what Jesus did. We're asked to love the Lord our God with all our heart, our soul, our mind, and our being, and our neighbors ourselves. It's when we start to love our neighbors ourselves so much that we might fall into this trap a little bit, right? Of, oh, I got to serve, I got to do this. So we identified that. But what did Jesus do when his time was so limited on earth? And yet he carved out margins all the time.
Yeah. He's the perfect role model for godly self-care. Right? Because you've got to take care of what's going on here before you can be able to pour out into others.
Tell us how, like, what comes to mind when you think about his self-care? What did he do? How did he do it? And what can I use as a model?
Well, I think there's a number of ways that Jesus did it. You look scripturally, first of all, there were times that it says that he removed himself and he went out to the wilderness to be alone. It's almost as if Jesus were an introvert at heart, and he needed to pull away from the busyness of life in order to of course, pray, but to remount and reload a little bit in that time of solitude. So he practiced solitude. It says also there were times that they withdrew from the crowds and times that he just spent with his friends, those close disciples. He says, I no longer call you servants, but I call you friends. And he said those are the ones that he would withdraw from all the needs, everybody pulling on him that needed healing, that needed help, and that he was ministering to. And he took time to say no, and to draw away with his friends, because his friends replenished him, right?
Oh man, and he would pull away even on his last days, on earth, and pull and say, I need to be with my God. I need to be with my Father, and I need and so stay away. Right, those kinds of.
And there were even times that he engaged in social events and activities when he could have been doing ministry. But for him, he said, I need this too. Not just for you, but I need this too. A time that I can just kind of let my hair down, relax, remount, reload, and just have fun in social events, right?
Yep. And if you want, you all can find these events. Go study the way Jesus handled crowds, the way he dealt with his friends, the way he dealt with social events, and use that as this model of he did take care.
And one other important one that I think would be your favorite one is Jesus napped. He slept when there was a big old storm going on outside when they were on the lake, right? And so everybody else was panicking, but he was perfectly at rest, emotionally, mentally, and physically asleep. And so he took time out to rest and to nap.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that one, how much I'd like it. Is it wrong to love sleep so much? Is it wrong to love naps? Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm a napper in general.
You are a napper.
I have a couch at every office I've ever owned, and I guarantee you, if you show up around 1:30 or 2 o'clock, I'm probably taking a 30-minute nap, and you're like, oh, he must be in there working.
He's praying. Look at his eyes
finishing up
closed.
some extra work on his dissertation follow-up. I guarantee you, man, I'm sleeping. Yeah. Okay, some of us love it. I don't think it's a sin to love sleep so much. And that probably, though, is a sign that you might need a little bit of time away. Okay, so Lisa, there are two important principles that you mentioned.
Right.
And give us those two principles, and let's talk about them real quick.
Yeah, well, there are really two questions that you can ask yourself. First of all, number one is, what brings me rest? What gives me rest? And then the second one is, what brings me life? What is life-giving to me?
Man. So what you're saying is, write these two questions down and answer them.
Yeah.
During time away. What brings me rest?
Yeah.
And what brings me life?
Yeah.
Woo, man. All right. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So when you think about that question, what brings me rest? What we're talking about is a time for you to physically rest your bones, your muscles, your body. It's like, what are the things that recharge me physically? What brings life back into my body,
Okay,
my actual physical body.
What brings back life into your body? What does it for you?
Yeah.
Give me an example of you get tired, you're busy all the time. Think about the kids are young, running around, and you're like, what do I need? What did you need?
Yeah. So I think that for me, the things that bring me rest are um, time with my friends. Like I have two girlfriends that we have annual passes to Disneyland, and we go to Disneyland. And it's basically an expensive way to stand in line for 8 hours and talk with my girlfriends and laugh and have fun.
And you have another friend, and I remember you coming and saying, oh, they want to go on a cruise. Can I go? And what do you think?
Oh, a girls' weekend away. Yeah.
Well, first of all, what about me? Who's
Wait, this one is about me and godly spouse care, not first care.
And if it is the opposite, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. Where's my wife? What do I do? I learned we have a stove, and I don't even know how to turn it on. Well, you were gone. I'm like, who's going to help me?
I have spoiled you rotten.
I'm a lucky man. So you have
DoorDash.
friends.
You have DoorDash. That's what you have.
You have friends you go on a cruise with. I have DoorDash.
So look,
you have friends that you've done different things with, and you say it brings you rest because it's like a social event for you.
yeah, and also like watching videos. Sometimes just mindlessly scrolling through social media is just time to disengage. Reading a book. I love to read a really good book. So reading, a spa day, for less expensive times.
Wait, I want to hear these.
A walk it. Just going for me. Being in nature is my spiritual temperament. It's my love language. So just maybe taking an afternoon down at the beach or going for a walk around our neighborhood, or even just sitting out on our patio. We have kind of a creek that goes through our backyard, even in the middle of Southern California. It's kind of crazy. You feel like you're out in the country. But just spending time in the mornings with my Lord, that's where I have my quiet time. Oh, at night I'll turn the fire pit on and just sit out there and read by the fire pit, because it's in nature, it's reading. That's how I self-care. That's what takes care of Alisa.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it would be very similar. I think for me, I love, still engaging with things and ideas. I could find myself lost in a book or in a topic but instead of it being maybe necessarily related to work or relationships or marriage, like, you and I work on all the time, it's kind of more like, I just love, for example, sports, right? So for me to sit and watch a baseball game or the NBA playoffs or the National Hockey League playoffs, or the Dodgers beating up everybody, or even just watching anything on a sports channel.
Yeah.
I just relax, and I'm like, okay, I'm back in my happy place.
That's great.
Okay.
So you not only identify what brings you rest, okay, what brings me rest, but then as a spouse, part of being married is caring for each other. And so it's being able to ask you, Chris, what brings you rest? And then what can I do to help you get that kind of rest? What can I do? Where can I step in? What do you need me to take off your plate so that you have this time of rest for whatever period, whether it's 30 minutes when you come in the door from work. When we had kids, I just needed to keep them busy for that first 15 to 30 minutes. You said hi, gave everybody kisses and everything. And then I would distract them so you could go in the room and you could just have your Diet Coke, eat your pistachio nuts that was set out for you, and just gave you that time where you read the news.
Yeah.
Maybe you just debriefed. And then after you reached that time of refreshment, then you were ready to come out, engage. And then later in the night, you would do that for me. You would help get the kids in bed. You would help get their pajamas on, get them in bed while I'm taking time away. Maybe it's a hot bath. And I would just put candles up in the bathroom, turn the lights out, and sit there and soak in the tub for a little while you were putting the kids in bed.
Yeah, and the way I put the kids to bed was I taught them that I would say, do you want a whooping? And they would
You
always
wouldn't.
answer yes. And here's what I did.
Oh,
I taught them, I said,
yeah.
a whooping is when they wanted, when I would be rolling with them on the bed and we'd be play fighting and I'd grab them both and we'd roll.
And they say, whoop up on us,
I'd
Daddy.
say, I'm whooping you good. And I'd say, you want me to whoop you? Yeah, Daddy. And so I'd grab the pillow and they'd jump and I'd knock their legs out from them and they're dying laughing. I said, I'm going to whoop you again. So from that point on, I'd come home every day and they said, Daddy, will you whoop me now? And I said, son, I'll whoop you if you did your bath. If you get ready for bed, then I'm going to whoop you. He goes, oh, thank you, Daddy. So it's just this beautiful moment of being able to whoop your kids and have them ask for it.
And they actually like it.
So I remember one time we brought on a couple and we're eating dinner and the kids are about to finish up. Daddy, could you whoop us now? And this couple looked at me
You're like,
and I went,
what the
"Son,
heck?"
did you eat your dinner? Yeah, Daddy, I did. I said, all right, what are you going to do next?
You pick up my toys.
I'm going to go pick up my toys. I said, all right, and then what? And then I'm going to go get ready for bed. And will you whoop me then? I said, son, it's going to be my joy to whoop you then. Thank you, Daddy. I'm going to go do it now. I said, hurry up, because I'm going to whoop you now. And this couple looked at us with the most astonished look on their face saying, my goodness, what
God. What have we stepped into?
Okay, so while you were getting your rest, I was whooping the kids and we were all happy, right? The point that we're making, let's get back, it is this. What brings you rest? Go find it, and with your spouse, go make it happen for them.
Yes, what recharges your body.
And maybe it's a whole weekend away. Maybe they need a day away with their friends. Or go on a date night, with a couple of girlfriends that you have. Whatever it is, you need it. And I would suggest that's the cool thing. So one more, and that's the second question you need to ask yourself. And Lisa, what is that second question?
Yeah, and this question is, what brings you life? So when we talk about what brings you life, Chris, what we're talking about is what awakens your passion? What brings meaning and purpose to your life? What are those things that you can build into your life that bring you meaning and purpose and just reawakens your soul? In other words, if rest is recharging your body, then the life-giving things are the things that recharge your soul. Okay? So like for you, what would you say are some of those passion things?
The one that I almost always mention is what brings me joy in life. It's related, honestly, to teaching at a university, a particular course, Intro to Psychology, and I find myself standing up there lecturing about the coolest things, about the brain, about emotions, about disorders, but also about cool things, like what does this mean and what is, and how. And as I'm lecturing, I just find students, especially, the feedback is, that's so cool, it's so interesting, because I think it brings me life. And so what do I do to bring life? I prepare for lectures, I read everything, because it's interesting. And then I know when I stand up and I get to lecture on this topic, I find it brings me life.
Yeah, several years ago when the president of the University of Biola, Dr. Barry Corey, he approached you about leaving faculty and completely and taking the vice presidency of student development, university planning, and IT. And
by the way, the acronym, Student Development, University Planning, and IT, SDUPIT. I said, Barry, did you ask me to be the VP of Stupid? And he went, oh, Chris, no, I'm sorry. Let's change that. We can change the order. And I said, no, I'll only take this position if I'm called the VP of Stupid. And so for 7 years, I was the Stupid VP.
Yeah. You remember what you were when you were the associate provost?
Yeah, let's not talk about it. Associate provost.
Anyway, but what I think one of the important things about that you did, Chris, is that when you told Dr. Corey, yes, I will be your vice president, you included a caveat. You said, I will only do it if I can still continue teaching Intro to Psychology. And so you were taking a lot onto your plate because you had a full-time job of vice president, but then you were teaching a class of like what was 500 or 600 intro to psych students, office hours, appointments with students. You took that on top of it because it was life-giving to you. It's what enabled you to do the administrative work, which was not your sweet spot, even though you have a gift for it, you were super good at it. But that's not what really gave you life. It was the teaching, wasn't it?
Yeah, and to the president's credit, he said,
Okay.
this is kind of maybe not normal, not the way I would do it, but you know what? I can see how important this is. And he recognized the value, of it for me and maybe even for the students, and agreed to it, which I'll be forever grateful. And but so yeah, Lisa, that's you have to identify what brings you life, what just kind of feeds your soul. And sometimes it's just being alone and playing a video game and winning, or sometimes it's just simply, doing something of a hobby, and it feeds my soul, and time goes away when I'm wood carving and whatever.
Our time with our kids. And our grandkids
and
now.
Whooping your kids. By the way, our grandkids now know about whoopings, and now
sure do.
and one of them goes, Doc, will you whoop me now? And their parents looked at me like, oh dear Lord.
He's doing it again.
Lisa, what about you? Did you have anything that it brings you life when you think about it? You've already mentioned some.
Well, for me, one of them is spending time with our friends. I really love that. I'm more of the extrovert. I'm still an introvert, but I have a strong extrovert tendency. I do, because I do love that time on the porch alone to remount and recharge.
Yeah, well, while you're there, you're remounting, recharging about how many friends can we get together with tonight, tomorrow, and the next day. You're thinking,
I do have some extrovert tendencies.
Some?
Yes.
My goodness, you come in and say, hey, Chris, let's go to dinner tonight with so-and-so. We just had lunch with these other people. You're like, I know, isn't it going to be fun? And I'm like, no, it's not. Let's stay home and watch the Dodger game. Let's stay home and wood carve and make, paper mache. And you're like, what is that? I go, I don't know. I just don't want to go with people tonight.
For me,
What brings you life?
yeah, it's being with friends, and honestly, like our date nights together. Like when we get away and we get a weekend away, or even just a lunch, just going to lunch together. Or we were driving home from work the other night and we were in the same car, which is really an oddity because usually we're coming and going even at the same office at different times. We have two different cars. But those rare times that you and I get to drive to work together or drive home, or we just went to a wedding where we had to drive 6 hours in the car there on Friday and then 6 back on Sunday. And what did we do? We talked the entire 12 hours.
Yeah,
You never napped?
10 hours, because the last hour and a half when we hit LA, if you remember, I'm like, all right, I'm out. You drive, I'm sleeping.
That's true.
But
That
other
maybe
than
that.
it was like 10 and a half out of 12 hours.
And we honestly did. We didn't run out of anything to talk about, which was so fun. And it just made me feel, it makes me feel alive, makes me feel passionate about our marriage, our relationship, about you. And it charges my battery to spend that one-on-one time with you.
And
it really
shout
does.
out to the couple that made that happen. It was their wedding we went to.
Alisa and Blaine.
Alisa,
That's right.
who was named after you. Her name is Alisa Bach, and now she married.
Love you, Alisa.
Yeah, and Blaine, we love you guys. And that's what provided that 6-hour drive.
Yes.
And I hope they compensate us for gas, because that was a lot of money, man. What's up?
Nope, it was worth it.
It was
really
so,
worth
Lisa,
it.
that idea then for you,
Yeah.
are the questions you're asking. I guess what you're saying is we're challenging y'all listeners to find that which brings you rest,
Yes.
that which brings you life,
Yeah.
and then do those.
Yeah.
That's how you create margin.
And I love this verse, Chris, the one from Ezekiel where he's talking about dry bones, right? And I'll just read it. It says, prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. He says, I will make breath enter you and you will come to life. And so it's these kind of life-giving activities really that you sense the Lord breathing life back into you.
What's the verse again? Chapter and verse
Now,
of Ezekiel?
that's Ezekiel 37, 4 through 5. And do you remember, when you think about these things that bring you life, the things where you sense God's pleasure in you? Do you remember Eric Little? He was the subject of the movie, what was it called?
Yeah, I'll get it in a minute. Something gold, something.
Oh, what was the name of the movie?
Running movie. Right?
Do you know, Tatum? We're asking Tatum.
Conviction.
No, it was the it'll come to us in just a moment. But Eric Little, he grew up on the mission field in China, right? He and his brother ended up going back to the UK where they were from to go to boarding school, starting like in first grade. And while he was there, Chariots of Fire. That's the name of the movie, Chariots of Fire.
How do we get that?
I don't know, Chariots of Fire. I don't know what Golden had to do with it, but anyway, while he was in high school.
Golden said golden. You just dissed me. Oh, what golden?
I'm so sorry.
No.
But while he was in high school, he discovered he was really good at running. And so his plans, while he was in high school, he was on the track team. In college there in Cambridge, Cambridge or Oxford. Anyway, he was on the track team and ended up competing on the 1924 Olympic team, right? But the problem is that after college, his plan was he was supposed to go back to the mission field in China. And so in the movie and in the book, Chariots of Fire, his sister was asking him, Eric, what are you doing? Yeah. Why aren't you going back to the mission field? God's called you to the mission field. There's a bigger purpose here in that big Christian vocation. And she put a lot of pressure on him. From that Christian spiritual sense, right, that we've all felt.
And what did he answer, Lise?
Yes, what he told her was, God made me fast. And when I run, I feel God's pleasure. And so that was what was life-giving for Eric. And so he ended up competing in the Olympics because God wired him to do that. And then eventually he ended up...
Don't the story. They got to go watch the end. You
Okay.
have to tell them. It's 25 years old. I don't think you're going to ruin it for anybody.
No, so he ended up going back to the mission field, but it was after he competed and he won like 4 gold medals.
Not many, but he won
did.
something.
He did. He won gold medals.
But the phrase that stood out to you and to a lot of other people is, I feel when I run, God made me fast, and I feel His pleasure.
Yeah, and so where do you feel God's pleasure?
You feel His pleasure. Yeah. Find that, and you are about to open up some secrets. And by the way, that pleasure can change over time. You may not have it, and you may not know. You're like, I don't know yet, and that's okay. You know, if you're 20, 21, you may not know that. Yeah. But you may have something of an idea at 24, 25. That may change when you're 30.
Yeah. Somebody told us one time that when you look at where your gifting intersects with your passion and that meaning, that purpose that brings you life, that's your sweet spot in life.
That's right.
That's your sweet spot.
Yeah, it was written in a small little pamphlet by an amazing author who I can't remember his name. But that idea, what are you good at?
Yeah.
What brings you pleasure? Right? What brings you a passion? And in that sweet spot, it's as if you're doing something and time fades. Yeah. Your soul is fed. Yeah. Busyness of life no longer is taking away from, and you're experiencing first fruits.
That's right. And so then when you think of it in terms of, let's go back to marriage, that analogy, or not analogy, but that situation, and then begin to identify, ask each other, where I would say, Chris, what are those life-giving things, those activities that bring you life? And like for you, part of that was spending time with your friends when you went to the Final Four for several years in a row with a bunch of guys. Y'all entered the lottery, and you all pulled your money for the hotel rooms, and you guys would go to the Final Four.
The NCAA men's basketball Final Four, whether it was in San Antonio or Indiana or Detroit, we would go. And it was just like 4 days of amazing.
And so, yeah, was that
Giving.
hard on me as a single parent with young kids? Yeah, it took some extra effort. But when I helped you carve out that space in life for you, you came back filled. And now you came back, you were a better husband. You were a better father because it breathed life back into you, that godly self-care. When you let me spend the money to get that Disney pass, okay, it's my Christmas present, my birthday present, my anniversary present, because Disney, yes, they have this great philosophy, spend more, get less. So that's our Disney philosophy.
We love Disney.
But it does, it breathes life in me to spend that time with my girlfriends. And so you make that happen for me. And it takes some sacrifice, it takes some effort. But you let me take that time off. You let me spend that money that is budgeted for that to go and do that.
So what I'm hearing you saying, Lisa, is for couples, even dating and others, is start to navigate where do you find life? Where do you find rest? And where do you find pleasure and joy? And then make that happen for the person you're with as much as you can, and start to carve out more space by saying no, helping identify the busyness, right? Mm-hmm. And then the counters to that are the final two questions.
Because when you do that, when you take time to take all those steps that you just recounted, when you do that, it replenishes your battery, right? It's like charging your cell phone that the battery has drained down to 1 or 2%. And you are in that burnout mode. And if you don't stop to take time to plug your phone back in, to plug your body back in, plug your heart back in, then your phone is not going to be useful. It can't fulfill its purpose when that battery is drained and it's dead. And we can get to that point where our battery is drained and we are just emotionally, mentally, relationally drained, unless we take time for that godly self-care and recharging.
You recharge, and when it comes back on, you delete some apps.
Yes.
Right?
That's
they're
right.
eating up too much of your battery.
Those places where you're overcommitted, overworked, you've got to remount, get those priorities back in line, figure out what things do I need to let go, what things do I maybe need to shift and reorder so that I can do it. Maybe it's just same good things, but less of it.
Well, Lisa, I think that's awesome, man. Great ideas, great questions, and then a great perspective on busyness and burnout and ways to counter that.
And because when we do it well, Chris, then we're able to pour into others and to love others well when our heart is refilled.
And that is what a first fruit is. I then have the ability to be that, to use that, to give that, which is the best of me.
Yeah.
When we do it. Well, I love it.
Yeah.
Way to go. Well, that's been another podcast, obviously sponsored by Biola University Center for Marriage and Relationships.
Yes, and Colby Gilmore of Blue Trust Wealth Associates. So, Colby, thank you for your support. You guys check out Colby Gilmore. Man, he is awesome. He is so awesome.
And check out the other podcasts and all the things that we have at cmr.biola.edu. And we'll see you again next time.
Bye-bye.
We're very glad you joined us for today's podcast. For more resources on marriage and healthy relationships, please visit our website at cmr.biola.edu. We'll see you next time on The Art of Relationships.